The abolition of slavery started in the North, where they believed that slavery was completely and normally wrong, rather than a social evil.
Abolitionists ranged in their own beliefs.
Some of them were from those who thought that all slaves should be freed immediately, like William Lloyd Garrison and or Franklin Douglass. They were the ones who thought that slavery was morally wrong, so they wanted all slaves to be free. Some also wanted for a calling for gradual emancipation. They were people like Theodore Weld and Arthur Tappan.
And finally, there was the last group of believers who wanted to stop the spread of slavery and its influence. These were people like Abraham Lincoln. This was one of the reasons he later on ran for president. Abolitionists later on campaigned for the end of the peculiar institution. Then they supported the anti-slavery causes, which was mainly the Free State movement in Kansas. At the same time this was all happening, the Southerners were debating against the North regarding the morality of slavery and using biblical sources as backup information to help prove their point. The South wanted to have slavery to be legal, which is why they came into this debate. Slavery and anti-slavery then went on to be a big part of the Civil War.
Abraham Lincoln was born on February 12, 1809. He was the 16th President of the United States. He served until he was assassinated in April 1865. He led the North of the United States side, or the Union, through the Civil War. Lincoln was raised in a poor family in the western frontier. He was self-educated and became a country lawyer during the 1830s. He was a one-term member of the United States House of Representatives during the 1840s. After a series of debates that gave national visibility to the expansion of slavery, Lincoln lost an important Senate race with his arch-rival, Stephen A. Douglas. Then, Lincoln, a moderate from a swing state, secured the Republican Party presidential nomination in 1860. With almost no support from the South, he swept the North and was elected president in 1860. His election was a signal for the 7 southern states to declare their secession from the Union and to form the Confederacy. The departure of the Southerners gave Lincoln full control of Congress, but no form of compromise was found between the two sides. Both parties decrypted war, but one of them would rather make war than let the nation survive, and the other would rather accept war rather than let it perish. Then war came. This was a quote by Abraham Lincoln. As more battles occurred, Lincoln put all political and military effort into the war.
It all started with Eli Whitney's invention of the cotton gin in 1793. Cotton became really profitable, and other plantations were willing to switch from other crops to cotton. Thus came the need for a large amount of free labor. They needed slaves. This meant that the southern states' economy depended on cotton and therefore on slaves.
On the other hand, the northern states depended more on industries.
This was the major difference between the North and the South. The North focused on city life, which meant that the people of different culture had to work together. On the other hand, the South continued to hold an old-fashioned social order.
As America began to expand, first it was new lands gained from the Louisiana Purchase, and later with the Mexican War, the question of whether new states admitted to the Union would be slave or free. The Missouri Compromise, passed in 1820, made a rule that prohibited states from the former Louisiana Purchase, except in Missouri. During the Mexican War, conflict started about what would happen to the new territories about the U.S. Expected to gain victory, David Wilmot proposed that the Wilmot Proviso in 1846, which would ban slavery in the new lands, however was shut down due to much debate. The Compromise of 1850, which was created by Henry Clay, and others to deal with the balance between slave and free states, northern and southern interests. Of the provisions was the Fugitive Slave Act. Another issue that further increased tension was the Kansas-Nebraska Act. It created 2 territories that would allow the states to use popular sovereignty to determine whether they would be free or slaves. The real issue occurred in Kansas, where pro-slavery Missourians began to pour into the state to help force it to be slave. They were called border ruffians. Problems came to a head in a violence at Lawrence, Kansas. The fight that occurred became called the Bleeding Kansas. The fight even erupted on the floor of the Senate, where an anti-slave proponent, Charles Sumner, was beat over the head by South Carolina Senator Preston Brooks.